right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So, before we get started, Third Place Books would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the Duwamish people and the land itself. So, welcome to our virtual event space. My name is Allie. I'm a bookseller at the Third Place the Lake Forest Park location, and I'm your host for this evening. And I am so excited to be introducing Margaret Owen and Hafsah Faizal here to discuss Margaret's new novel, Little Thieves. So before we get into the good stuff, I just want to quickly thank you all so much for tuning in. As much as we miss having these events in the bookstore, it has been such a delight to expand this online program to connect readers and authors in a virtual space. So thank you all so much for tuning in and buying books. Your support is what makes all of this possible. Speaking of having you all in the bookstore, if you are local, Margaret Owen is coming to our Lake Forest Park location tomorrow to sign books. For those of you who have already ordered your books and have asked for personalizations, don't worry, those have been signed and personalized already, and we've been packing those orders as fast as we can, so we'll have them in your hands as soon as possible. But for those of you who haven't purchased your books yet, come join us at the Lake Forest Park location tomorrow to get your books personalized. The signing starts at 7 and goes until 8, and we would so love to see you. So come on in. For those of you in the Seattle area who can't join us tomorrow, that's okay. Come on in at your leisure. All 3 of our locations are open, or you can place an order online and come pick them up in the store. Or if you're not local, we do ship. And once again, we are so grateful for your support. So while you're over on our website, I definitely encourage you to check out some of our other upcoming events. We have an exciting roster coming up in the next few months. And if you'd like to stay in touch with our community, you can sign up for our newsletter. It's a weekly update about events and exciting releases, our online book clubs, and of course, follow us on any of the major social media platforms. We are Third Place Books or Third Place Books Kids for the quickest updates and recommendations. Speaking of social media, if you'd like to check out some of our past virtual events, you can find most of them on our YouTube channel, including this event within the next 48 hours. So if you'd like to check out our other virtual events or maybe share this one, go ahead and track us down over there. We are here for about an hour, and towards the end, we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions, which we very much hope that you do, go ahead and leave those in the Q&A box, which should be either at the top or bottom of your screen. It is different than the chat box, which is great for virtual applause and connecting with each other. We would love to know where you're from or your latest favorite read, but when it comes time for questions, please do make sure those end up in the Q&A so we can most easily find them. So before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone of our commitment to ensuring the safety and well-being of event attendees and guest authors. So in our chat and question spaces, please do lead with kindness and refrain from any inappropriate behavior or harassment. There are auto-generated closed captions available from the menu at the top or the bottom of your screen. Select the live transcript button to enable or disable them. And finally, should any technical issues arise, we will work as quickly as we can to resolve them. And we appreciate your patience and understanding. All right, and I think that is all of my housekeeping. So without further ado, I am so thrilled to introduce Margaret Owen, author of the beloved Merciful Crow series, an incredible visual artist. Her newest book, Little Thieves, is an irreverent retelling of Goose Girl, in which a scrappy maid must outsmart both palace nobles and low gods to break the curse that is slowly turning her into jewels. It's a kids indie next pick for November, an Amazon Best Book of October, and has had third place booksellers. So excited for months. Nikki says it will have you in stitches and in your feelings, and called it one of her favorite releases of the year. So joining us tonight in conversation, I'm so happy to welcome Hafsah Faizal, the award-winning New York Times bestselling author of We Hunt the Flame and We Free the Stars. She's a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree and the founder of Icy Designs. Her upcoming book, The Tempest of Tea, comes out next spring and was pitched as King Arthur meets Peaky Blinders with vampires, which is a very cool sentence to say. So thank you both for being here. I am so excited to listen in on this conversation. If you need anything, give me a shout. I will be listening. Same goes for all of you in the audience. I will be in chat. And with that, I'm going to pass the stage off to our authors. So welcome, both of you.
There we go. Hello. Hello. How's it going? Oh, thank you for having thank you for having me first and foremost. Just gonna get that one right out of the way.
Hello everyone. We're so excited that you're here, and thank you so much, Third Place Books, for hosting this amazing party to celebrate my new book, Little Thieves. Oh wait, not mine. Margaret Owen's new book, Little Thieves. Which
an amazing job, Hafsah. I read it and cried so much. It was like I was writing it myself.
Really? Wow. Well, I felt the same. I read it months ago, and I'm still thinking about scenes from it, and the fact that there's art. And I mean, if you haven't yet purchased your copy, please do so now. I'll put it on display right here where it looks amazing. Anyway, so I'll jump right into the questions. And if you guys have any questions, please drop it in the Q&A, and then we'll get to them after.
Thank you.
Let's start from the very beginning, I guess. Where did you get this amazing concept? Like, how did the story idea first come to you?
So I don't know about you, but I found that I actually have one idea that will then start linking up with other ideas, and they form this atom of its own making. And it's there's the story. And so I'd had this idea for a while that I wanted to tell a story about a con artist who is cursed to do good deeds, because I love stories where it's here's a person who is very good at doing bad things, and then they're put in the position of having to do good things, and they find out that they're awful at it. They just completely shut down, it's this character.exe has stopped working. And so I liked that idea. And then I also had a D&D character background that was getting criminally underutilized, where it was a person who was impersonating a former child star as a cover to basically steal jewelry from high society parties. And so that kind of smashed into that. Right. And then when I was thinking about that, I was like, well, wait a second. If you combine these two, you have someone who is impersonating a high society person, and for what end? And I was like, well, what if it's a retelling of the Goose Girl, but it's from the perspective of the evil maid who steals the princess's place? And that's kind of how they all smashed together back in this would be October of 2019, in the before times.
Yeah. Seems like forever ago. Okay, so I love that you combined all of these different things together, but I mean, I will admit that until I picked up Little Thieves, at least until I saw the description for it, I had never heard of Goose Girl. I'm very behind on the times, however old that is.
The 1800s. It's an old one, but it's it's one of the lesser known ones, and it always seemed interesting to me because it's one of the few stories where there is no sort of magical transformation. There's no magic charm, although that changes in Little Thieves just because it kind of has to. But it says this maid can pass as a princess. No magic required. And I was like, I've always been kind of intrigued by that. Nobody caught on to that. Not a single one. No one Googled. No one.
I don't think it existed back then, but I could be wrong. So
magic Google.
Speaking of retellings, I think we usually assume that if something already exists, it's easier to rework it. And I mean, I've only done a retelling for a short story collection, but it was very, very hard because there's so much that goes into it and so much work that you have to. How is the process like for you on this retelling of Goose Girl?
Man. So I definitely, went in with the idea that I was going to just take some liberties with the canon, as it were. But, I did want to sort of try to make it feel very grounded in a lot of reality. But at the same time, if you crack open a book of Grimm's fairy tales, one of the things that's always interesting about it to me is that you'll see architecture from like the 1500s and clothing from the 1800s or the 1700s, and and the language is definitely from the 1800s or 1900s. So time wise, it's all over the place. And when you're researching what to use, you have to like go anywhere from like the 1300s to the 1800s. Like Emmerich's cravat is very anachronistic. Which anachronistic cravat might be the title of my autobiography, but but yeah, it's I think that was part of the challenging thing. Plus I also wanted to set it in this world that's kind of reminiscent of but free of some of the nastier parts of the Holy Roman Empire. And doing research on that was like
I can imagine.
Yeah, the political systems, my God. I was already simplifying some stuff down of like, the different ranks of nobility. And my lovely editor, Tiff, was like, this is a little complicated. Is there any way we can simplify this? And I was like, you have no idea how much we've already done. It's so bad. It's so bad.
The simplify editorial request is the bane of my existence. That's right. I'm on my second round of revisions, and that's like my biggest thing. I have to simplify. Right. Distill.
I don't want to do that. I want the Rococo of storytelling.
I can relate.
Right. Oh, my cat is chewing on my foot. Poke it off. Oh, bud, scoot.
Moment of silence.
Right. Here, I'm gonna shake the water ball at him, and then he'll stop. There we go. Problem solved.
Okay, so I am currently working on my own heist/con book, right? Yes. And I'm finding it quite a bit more difficult than like your standard fantasy because there's so many moving parts.
Exactly.
Many of which you don't want to disclose to the reader until a certain point, right?
Right.
So what was I'm just gonna pick your brain. Apologies to the audience, but what was your process like?
They knew what they were in for, so.
I think, what was the process like creating the cons in Little Thieves? I mean, particularly that stunner of an opening.
Oh, thank you. That one, I feel like that was just me being like, let's think of all the ways to go through like that. I think I came up with in that sort of honeymoon period where you've got the new idea and you're writing it, and it's the first like 30,000 words. So you're like, this is great. Nothing can possibly go wrong. I'm immortal. And then, like I'm going to live forever. This is always how I'm going to write. And then, you hit the 30,000 point, and then it's like, well, I'm a fraud. I never should have done this. I've made a huge mistake. But before I got to that point, I wrote that opening. And actually, I started right at the part where we first meet Vanja leaving the room. And my editor was like, Molly, you got to walk that back a little bit and start about, half an hour earlier so people can get their bearings. And that was very, very wise advice, because it basically let me sort of sit back and have Vanja be like, I'm about to do some things. I'm about to do some bad things, and you're going to watch and you're going to laugh. And the bonus part of that is that then the reader is automatically looking for it's like, watching the Find the Lady game. You're looking for the trick. You're looking to figure out what's going on. And that makes them pay attention to all the details, which is great because you need them to not skim. Like they need to be sort of on their toes to actually be tracking what's going on in that opening scene and getting all that info.
I mean, there's a balance. I mean, if you put too much, they are going to skim, but you had that perfect. I mean, it was just like so perfectly done. That beginning is one of my favorite scenes in the book, and it's one of my favorite scenes of all time, I think. So
thank you. I had a lot of fun writing it, just because it was also like, let's see how horrible she is and how bonkers it is, and like I want people to laugh, but also get a lot of insight into her character, where she's factoring things like, this is what the servant's going to do. This is how the lady's going to react. And you start to pick up on this thing of like, oh, she's figured out how to navigate a hostile working environment as a servant before. Insight.
Speaking of Vanja, she irritated me a lot in the beginning, and that's what makes her so amazing, that like while you're getting to know her and going through the story with her, you start falling in love with her, and that's a difficult feat to accomplish. So I mean, it was really well done. That's not a question, but yeah.
I mean, it's she is a rowdy girl.
She is, yes, and she can have some terrible thoughts and do some very terrible things.
Yes, indeed.
So I spent like much of the book thinking, okay, my favorite is Vanya. No, it's Emmerich. No, it's Brogna and Giselle. And I was like, I mean, they're all so great and so fleshed out. And I guess my question for you is, who was your favorite?
Oh man, they're all favorites in different ways, if that makes sense. Like with Vanya, I think there's a lot of vulnerability that you like slowly, like sort of, you know, there's a lot I think that resonates with people where you have a character who is slowly like a very hostile defensive character being slowly submerged in the mortifying ordeal of being known, and just sort of like, no, I don't perceive me, do not perceive. You know, that's
so you're writing your cats basically,
pretty much, as they're trying to knock over my ring light. Thanks, guys. So you know, that kind of emotional vulnerability I really enjoyed writing. It was very cathartic, I think. Emmerich definitely has a whole, like, I was absolutely a little know-it-all. Like, I loved reading aloud in class. I was always the kid who was like, I know the answer, and my teacher would be like, that's nice, Molly, let's let somebody else answer the question now, it's their turn. And I was like, but I had the right answer, why shouldn't I say it? And so there's a lot of that in him. Ragna I liked, or you know, Ragna is my favorite for just being this not just ray of sunshine, but also kind of this force of unquestionable good almost. Like she's not always helpful, and she can be kind of, you know, kind of messy in her own way, or like, you know, kind of screwy. And I love her for that. But you know, she's, you never think, you know, oh, she's going to turn on Vanya. She's just there to help and have fun. She's there to have a good time, basically. And that, I think, you know, having this sort of unquestionable, you know, if I can help you, I will kind of friend was fun. And also it was just fun to write the wild stuff that comes out of her mouth.
Yeah, she was wild and weird. I mean, so was Vanya, but still.
Right. And you know, I think she was very deliberately a foil to Vanya in the same way that Emmerich was. And Gisele, I think, you know, is my favorite in that, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I related to her, like being this body type that is not considered pretty, and growing up and getting that kind of messaging in the 90s. I mean, if you weren't like this big, you were not considered attractive at all, period. And you know, I wanted to sort of touch on that, but also dig into the fact that even though she has these struggles with, you know, the way that she has been treated because she's not conventionally pretty, there's also a lot of privilege that comes with her life situation, and she has been kind of ignorant to that and is forced to face that too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's just so much nuance to all of them, which is what makes them so great. Otherwise, you just have Vanya as your main character and all these like side shadows, which is
right.
You did so well. So.
It's also why it's 500 pages long, but you know.
Yeah, let's just ignore that.
You're right.
So I know the book's just released, but have you been surprised by like specific reader reactions? Like maybe you hadn't anticipated so and so being a fan favorite. What's been your favorite reaction thus far?
Oh man,
is it too early?
No, there's been some pretty good ones.
Okay.
I really enjoy the people who have like messaged me to be like, Emmerich is a terrible little academic jerk and I love him so much. Like, he's just a horrible little man and he's great. Or, you know, people who are like, I love Vanya and would die for her. Vanya did nothing wrong. And I'm like, she did some things wrong. She made some pretty strong choices. let's not quibble over that. You know, like it's I don't want to say it's like the bad art friend thing, but there's definitely a lot of interesting reactions in how people say what Vanya did was wrong, or you know, or she did nothing wrong, or it's understandable, but she still did something wrong. And seeing where people sort of fall on that whole spectrum has been really interesting. And just seeing, you know, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh yes, it's a gray area. That's where we live.
Okay, so I don't know much about Goose Girl, but the gods and the whole thing with the rubies and all of that, how did you come up with them? Like, how did this all happen?
Okay, so this is actually this is a thing that I was thinking about today because I realized I hadn't sort of talked about this part of the whole story. So the low gods, I wanted this idea of there being these kind of flawed, not like all omnipotent, but very specific gods that were literally manifestations of belief. So like they are what people believe them to be. And that changes from different, parts of, like different parts of the world, even different regions. So you won't see like certain gods out of some regions of the empire. So, I liked that idea of just engaging with that. And I liked that kind of came from old fashioned fairy tales, like some way out of the archives, like Godfather Death, where it actually is sort of feeding into Vanya's own backstory, where a kid is given to death or to have death as a godfather, and then that leads to a whole string of unfortunate events. So I wanted to tap into that with the low gods. With the Ruby Curse, I actually had a breast cancer scare back in October of 2019. And that and it was just a scare. It's fine. But good. It was a very tense couple of months as I was waiting to get a mammogram, because not to get too far into the details for folks, but you find a lump and you don't know what it is. And that idea, I wanted to sort of channel that visceral feeling of like, there's something in my body and I don't know what it is, and it's growing and I can't, or it could be growing and I can't stop it. Like there's a very primal fear of that. And I definitely channeled a lot of that into Vanya, where it's like, she can feel the jewels growing in her, and it's something that she both is and isn't enabled to stop.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I did not anticipate that backstory, but I'm glad you're okay.
Oh, me too.
Okay, so the art. Right. It was refreshing and dazzling. Like we definitely need more art in YA books.
Agreed.
How did that come about? Like, okay, I'm just putting myself in your shoes. If I was sitting there and trying to decide what I would draw art for, if I was looking at some scenes in my book, I would not be able to choose. I would have like 2 pieces back to back, and then 10 chapters later, another 5 pieces back to back, because it's just, I can't do that.
Yeah.
How did you?
So it ultimately, when I was thinking, there were some things that I was thinking about as I was writing the book of like, this is how I want it formatted. Like I wanted to feel very immersive. And I wanted to, from the opening, because the opening was always the same, where you have that little prologue with death and fortune at the crossroads. I wanted that feeling of you've opened a fairy tale book and you are in the fairy tale now. And for me, a huge part of that was always, turning the page and finding these gorgeous, pen and ink illustrations or beautiful engravings. And I didn't have the time to learn how to do engravings, but
all
right. Exactly. We'll get it with the next book. But I wanted to have that feeling with the book. And so I had mentioned to my editor, hey, this is a possibility, but this was like, after I turned in like the first draft, and then like around December, January of last year, I was like, okay, so if we knew this, we need to pull the trigger on this so that I can actually start working on these. And what I wanted specifically was for there to be one illustration for each of the sort of fairy tale interstitials, because I wanted that feeling of like, you are almost outside of the narrative, you are in the narrative within the narrative. So you've opened the book to this part, and that kind of visual marker of here's a story that has been inserted into this book for you to get some more insights. And you can tell because it's got this illustration to go with it. Although oh man, I can't believe I put the book I moved the illustrations to somewhere safe so my cats couldn't get them, but I can show the book. There's something that's actually kind of cool about this. I'm going to go on a very quick tangent so we don't run out of time. But so if you have time, excellent. So if you look at the book or the illustrations, you've got the first one, and then there's 7 total. And I think the clearest one is actually the 4th and 6th. The 3rd and 6th, 3rd and 5th. That's what it is. They actually, so there's 7 illustrations total. And they're telling Vanya's backstory as a character. And if you look through them, you start to notice that, let me see if I can find the second one, because that'll help. Like they almost sort of mirror each other. And let's see if we can find the second one. If not, that's okay. Aha.
This is the second one. Okay.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah,
So hold that up for me. And then I'll find the sixth one. Here we go. So if you look at this, these are mirror images of each other. And so that's the second and the sixth. The first and the seventh are also mirror images of each other. The third and the fifth one are also mirror images of each other. And the grand finale, not the finale, the fourth one, let me see if I can find that. Not that one. So that would be this one. The fourth one shows our characters looking in a mirror. So this is the sort of reflecting point right before Vanya decides to take the princess's place. And that's when she decides to reverse their places.
Wow.
And so
I didn't realize that.
Right? Like all the illustrations after that are reflections of the ones that came before it. They're just inverted.
Amazing. I mean, okay, so you're a good writer. Good, good writer. Also a good artist. Also a good artist. And also really, really smart. I'm amazed, impressed.
I have no social life. That's what it is.
And yes, for whoever didn't know, this does have the artwork inside of it in black and white. Mm-hmm. And it also has a chock full of starred reviews because it's that good. So pick it up.
Thank you. No, compliments. I'm dying. But yeah, the art comes with all standard editions of the book. That was kind of a thing that I wanted to include just as a baseline. Is like, this is part of the story itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely hypes. Increases your that I'm bad with words. Did you know?
No.
I don't know.
Listen, I am all about hype. I am an author first and a businesswoman second. And the businesswoman in me is like, yes, please, hype. Excellent. We love that. We love to see it.
Yeah, the artwork definitely heightens the experience. So make sure you pay attention to them. So we are running low on time. So tell me what's next for you. I know this just came out a few days ago, but an author's life is always on deadline, I'm sure.
Right, exactly. So some stuff I can't talk about yet, but I think we're going to be announcing like next week or so.
Next week, okay.
Fingers crossed. It'll be a Tuesday or Thursday announcement. Let's put it that way. And then what I can talk about is the Grimoire of Grave Fates. Which is
I've heard of that one.
Right? Yeah, you might be familiar. It's actually, so it's the anthology I'm co-editing with Hannah Alkoff, and Hafsah is actually contributing to it with an amazing contribution that I love so much. And for those of you who aren't familiar or haven't heard of it, because we just announced it like a couple months ago, it's basically this anthology set in a magical school, an elite magical boarding school, where a very unpopular, emotionally abusive professor has been found murdered. And every story or every chapter is told from a different student who's connected to the murder somehow, as they try to unravel what happened and whether or not a murderer is still in the school. And it's been so much fun working on that and working with everybody, and just Hannah and I are just continually blown away by everybody's talent and like just how fast, just be like, how did you write something this good this fast? How is this possible? This is a land speed record for excellence. But yeah, that's what we're working on now.
Yeah, and I guess we'll be all paying attention to that announcement coming up sometime next week. Yes. I mean, I'm sure it'll be as gorgeous and amazing as this one. But if you haven't read this yet, go ahead. Do so now. It just came out. You're not too late.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess we'll move on. Is there any question you want to ask yourself?
Oh. I mean, I could run at the mouth for hours. I'm pretty sure everybody who's interviewed me has found that horrifically to be true. But actually, Is Tempest of Tea a trilogy or a duology?
I meant questions for yourself, but
I
yes,
know, but now
Tempest of Tea is a duology. Yes,
okay.
2
I'm
books.
so excited. I mean, I have questions, but
I mean, if you
If
want to
we're-
read it early, that could be arranged. So
yes, please. I would like to read it early.
I'll see what I can do.
We might be able to pull some strings.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yes, this is one of the perks of being an author. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that's awful, but well, no, I take it's fantastic. But also, you do get to read like some of your favorite authors like months in advance, and then they'll be like, "Oh no, it's the worst thing I've ever written. Don't read it." And I'll be like, "Too late. I'm in love with it. Deal with it. Goodbye."
That's exactly it. Yes. Okay. If anyone has any questions, please drop them in the Q&A, and I think
Yes.
I'll be going through them now.
Excellent.
Yes. Okay. Let's go. I guess I will just read directly from these. Okay. So, can we see Poe, please? Bethany wants to know.
Let me see if he's around. I think I just saw him run outside. He's got a little catio. It's very cute. But that means he might be doing his business. But if he comes back, I will try to lure him over here.
Okay.
Don't worry,
Oh,
Bethany,
this is a
I
good
got
one.
you.
Are there any scenes that didn't make it into the book that you were particularly fond of?
Okay. Oh, there he is. Popo, come here. Poe, come here. I know. Yeah, don't attack my hand. No, I want to pick you up. Ha! Got you. Here's the baby. Oh, he's covered in gross stuff. Oh no. I'm gonna grab a tissue.
Oh no.
It's okay. It's all good. We're just gonna do a lot less gesturing with my hands now. But yeah, hopefully you saw this. You briefly saw the baby as covered in gross stuff as he is. But I'll make sure I didn't like track any on me. Delightful little children. But yeah. Okay, so there was one scene, like, so there's a couple different cons within the book, and let me make sure hands are relatively clean. Gesturing is free game. So there's a couple different cons within the book. There's one scene where Vanya is sort of she's cruising around the seedy district, and she cons basically the mob out of a lot of money. And originally I did that with a different con entirely, which was one of my favorites, but my editor was very correct in that it was a kind of boring one narratively, which is that I took it straight from Frank Abagnale Jr. It was this con where he dressed up as a security officer, went to go stand by a deposit box where people would just leave money and checks, because that was the 70s. That's just what they did. And he put a note on the deposit box, so on the drop box, being like, out of order, please leave checks with security guard. And then people would just hand him their money. They would just give it to them. They would just give it. They would just hand him money. And he was like, no one asked themselves, how can a drop box be out of order? Like, no one, not even for a second. And so I had a version of that where Vanya was just like, she did the same to basically a deposit box that was run by the mob, and just sat nearby, and people would just bring her money. And yeah,
I can see why your editor said no.
Exactly. It was way too passive, which is tragic, but that is what it is.
I actually have a question that stems from that. Do you have a favorite scene from the book that is in the book?
Ooh, okay, so I had a lot of fun writing the ending. There is one part where I won't spoil anything, but there's something that gets introduced sort of early in the book as like a fun kind of little aside, like world building thing, and then it comes in a big way in the end. And I like had Pacific Rim playing in my mind when I was writing that. I was just like, this is gonna be so good, because I remember writing that little world building aside and then being like, stop, wait, oh my god, I know where this is going. I know where I can use this. And then it just paying off towards the end in just my favorite possible way.
Okay. I mean, aside from it being your favorite, that is the best thing that can happen. Like when something, little thing that you
Right.
put in, it's just, yeah. I mean, you're on top of the world for that like 1 minute, I guess.
Exactly. You're like, I'm the best author who's ever lived and will ever live. You're like, I am undefeatable. And then you find like a scene transition that you have to write, and you're like, why was I cursed to live this existence? Why was I cursed to this life?
Okay, so Kathleen wants to know, are you originally from Oregon? Where did you grow up? She's writing from Portland.
Oh, exciting. Yes, I am originally from Oregon. I was born like, I think it's Cedar Mill area. I shouldn't give out too much information because I think some of those are at least a few of those are security questions. But I grew up about 20 minutes south of Portland, across the river from Oregon City, in a town called West Lynn. Now, if you Google West Lynn, you will see that the average income is extremely high, but my family moved in when it was extremely low. So it was a very interesting sort of disparity where I would see my classmates, my 16-year-old classmates driving around a car worth the annual income of my family. And it's like, oh,
okay.
Cool story, cool stuff, But yeah, so I grew up there. I basically lived in Powell's Books. I got to spend $10 a month on books, I think from when I was about like 10 years old onward. No, I think we might have started earlier. But yeah, and that definitely sort of cemented my love of reading.
Aw, I love that. I wasn't much of a reader as a kid, so I always love hearing other stories.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is unrelated to Little Thieves, which I'm so excited to read, says an anonymous attendee.
Yay.
But do you think you'll ever revisit the world from the Merciful Crow?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I want to say never say never. There are definitely, I think the point we left it off at was a definite, like, that was a period on the end of a sentence. Maybe more of an exclamation point, maybe a bit of an interrobang. But I think for those characters specifically, that story is complete, but you might see them show up in another story potentially. But yeah, no, I think, never say never. I will leave the door open for that.
Okay, so how many books will this series be? Is it a duology or a trilogy? This question is from Kimi.
So what I can say right now is that Little Thieves was written as a standalone. So any expansions on that would probably follow a similar model where it's sort of more self-contained. But yeah, so it is written to be like, it was written as a standalone. It stands on its own. That's what I can say for now.
Okay, so there was another question that was similar. Is Little Thieves a standalone? If so, do you have plans for your next project?
Oh boy,
that's from Katie.
I have, so yeah, Little Thieves is a standalone. For the time being, it is a standalone. But again, it's like Merciful Crow. You never say never. And I could definitely write a whole lot more about these characters. I just had so much fun with it. But as far as like next books, at any given point in time, I have like 50 different books banging around in my head, and it's like, well, I should write this one now. Oh my god, it's so bad. I have like so many ideas, and I just have to keep a running list of them so I don't forget them. But yeah, no, there's a whole bunch of stuff I would love to do. I would love to do a sort of creepy horror around a sort of creepy pasta podcast idea. I have that idea. I have a whole other idea that's like Venetian magical girls kind of thing, like Renaissance magical girl kind of situation that would be really fun. I have so many ideas. Most of them are YA, but some of them are.
I'm kind of the opposite, where I just never have ideas while I'm working on one book. It's like my brain cannot spread that far.
Yeah, mine is like I have a very adulterous brain, which is hilarious because like I'll just be like, I need to be committed to this book right now, and my brain will be like, but there's this cool idea over there. What if you wrote 50 pages in a synopsis? And I'd be like, no, what if I didn't? What if I finished the book that I'm under contract for? How about that? How about we do that?
Anonymous also wants to know, if you could do a retelling of another fairy tale, which would it be?
Ooh. I think there are so many fairy tales I would love to retell. I think my favorite one that would probably lend itself to a really good retelling that I haven't like actually thought of a plot for would be East of the Sun, West of the Moon. We were talking about that, I think, a couple days ago, where it's just got a plot, like an inherent plot that is it lends itself to a YA structure of like going on a quest to achieve something really, really well, because it's about this girl who it's very much like a Cupid and Psyche story, where she is married to this mysterious man. She never sees him. And then her sister basically eggs her into looking at him. Turns out he's A, super hot, and B, cursed to not be perceived by her, I guess. There's something about it. But she loses like the giant palace and her husband, and has to go like work with like, or go seek help from the four winds to go get him back, because he's been taken somewhere east of the sun and west of the moon, and she needs help reaching that place. So then it's lent itself to a YA like arc pretty well. Like you've got a pretty solid inciting incident built in. But yeah, I think that one would be really fun to overhaul.
It's also romantic, which is
also very romantic. There are so many like opportunities for there are so many vulnerabilities in that story. There's a whole thing where like she finally meets her husband again, and he doesn't recognize her at all because he's been drinking a potion. And I'm just like, oh, I could make that so devastating. Oh, I could make that awful.
Please don't. No, you can stop now.
I want to make everybody cry.
Christine wants to know, now that you've done a short graphic novel and book illustrations, do you have any other graphic novel / comic / illustration projects planned for the future? She loves your art and your story ideas.
Oh, thank you. I think so that I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent here. I'm going to keep it focused. The short answer is the way that the speed and rate at which I can do prose novels at this point is more career friendly than doing graphic novels. It would take me probably about 2 to 3 years of solid work to draft and complete a graphic novel, whereas I can at least do a draft of a prose novel in like 3 months, and then it'll take another 9 months to edit all the way through. But it would be really cool. It's also something where I want to make sure that I'm doing it in a way that is not necessarily damaging to my health, because I do primarily digital art, and I think even with regular art, you have the challenge of eye strain, wrist strain, and I'm getting old. I'm an old lady, and my eyes aren't so good anymore. But I do want to I don't want to blow out my eyes doing a graphic novel, and I've got so many cool things to see.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't realize it took that long. I mean, I should have realized, but I did think.
I think the way I sort of like try to explain it is that I wrote the scene that I adapted as a graphic novel in like a night. It maybe took me a day to write the scene where Vanya gets cursed, and it's like a couple pages, maybe like 5 pages max in the book, and it's 11 pages to tell the same exact scene in a graphic form, and it took me like 3 or 4 weeks to do from beginning to end, and I'd already had it written out. So I think that helps, and that was like very nonstop focused work, just grinding out the art on that, because I wanted to make sure it got out the door as fast as possible. But yeah, so I think that's part of the reality of working on graphic novels as opposed to prose novels. It's a lot more labor intensive in surprising ways.
Yeah. So before I jump into Sarah's question, I just noticed your necklace, and it's a pearl necklace.
I got it at a rent fair. I actually got it at a rent fair this summer because I was like, you stop at the booth and you're like looking around at stuff, and I saw the pearl necklace, and it was like, so they're freshwater pearls, so they're not very expensive. But I was like, I think I have to get this and wear this for events for Little Thieves. I think I just kind of do. But they're imperfect pearls. So
if you haven't read the book yet, the pearls are important in the story. So
yes, the necklace, the pearl necklace is what enables Vanya to assume the physical appearance of a very sort of Instagram filtered version of Princess Gisele. And that there's a whole lot of stuff to unpack with that from both Vanja and Gisele, because the pearls came from her mom, from Giselle's mom. Be like, here, now you can be hot enough for this rich and powerful man to like you. And Giselle's like, well, thank you, mom, thanks. And Vanja sees in that an opportunity to be like, now I can be the hot, powerful, rich princess and get away from these horrible people who have been employing me. But that's mild spoilers. So.
Okay, so Sarah wants to know, what is your drafting process like?
Oh boy, this is my favorite, because I get asked it a couple times, or I've been asked it relatively frequently, and I'm trying to figure out how to explain it in the shortest way possible, because it's very influenced by the way I draw, which is you start with a thumbnail, a very loose, small sketch, and you can go through a couple iterations of that, and then I refine that like into more developed and polished sketches until I start working on the final piece. But with outlining for books, what I tend to do is, I've got that sort of primordial soup, first atomic collision idea, and I start thinking about scenes that I want to have happen. And, that'll happen with, listening to music, walking around, thinking about things. And then I will write down all the scenes and cool things that I think should be part of the book. And then I'll put that list in chronological order. And then I'll start being like, okay, well, we need some kind of padding here and here and here. We need some transitions here. And I'll flesh out the rest of that. I will break that into acts. And then I will start basically draft. It depends on the book. Sometimes I'll draft a couple sentence long chapter by chapter outline, act by act. And sometimes I'll just write a paragraph. Sometimes I'll write a bullet list that's very detailed of all the events that happen in sequence. Either way, what I am ultimately left with is a sentence or two that will constitute a chapter. And that is about the biggest, the most detail I put into an outline, the broad story-wide outline. And then what I will do is, as I'm drafting each chapter, I will take that little brief sentence chapter summary, move it into a different doc, and then flesh out that entire chapter outline. And that side doc also has notes of things that I missed in the last doc, or the last chapter, that I need to incorporate, or themes that I want to carry over, or something that got introduced in the chapter but isn't in the outline, and so I need to keep that at the top of my head. And I basically, once I've got that outline, then I draft. So I figure out a whole lot of the chapter beforehand, but I still leave enough wiggle room that if I kill off a character that I actually needed for the third act, I can just write in a new one, or I can figure something out. I can still tweak on that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how authors outline books. I just can't. I mean, I do sometimes very, very loosely, but then almost every single time I discover that partway through, characters want something else. Yep. And I kind of want to listen to them.
I left the ending, the big ending scene in Little Thieves, I left very vague for a very long time. I was like, I know this is the event it's going to happen at, and I know that this is going to be the outcome, and I know that this particular exchange involving Penny, that's going to be sort of a key thing. That's all I nailed down. And then once I actually got to the third act, and towards the end of the third act, I was like, I need to be very clear about what's happening, because there's a lot of moving parts, and I need to make sure that all those spinning plates land intact, except for Adelbrecht's. That one can fall and die. Good for the villains.
Okay, so our next question. Katie wants to know, do you relate to any of the characters, and why? She loves you so much. She loves us so much. Thank you.
That's very sweet. I think, when we're talking about who's your favorite, I definitely put something relatable in just about every character except for the villain. Everybody else is there's got to be something that's that ties me to them somehow, because I think that helps me, even at their most flawed, their most judgmental, their most awful, then I'm I still at least can connect to that and empathize with that and be or have that sort of channel of connectivity with them. so yeah, with Vanya, I absolutely empathize, and relate to the whole, you have been, or I guess the dynamic of, she's been overworked and underpaid for so long that when she actually has this opportunity to live the life that she's dreamed, she doesn't even know how to take care of herself at the end of the day, and she won't let anyone else take care of her. And that, to me, like, before I became a full-time author, my job was very much like to be what constituted a live-in maid at a tech company, and it was a whole mess. And like, once I actually, you're right, and once I was like, yeah, I'm publishing a book that's paying me like 5 times what you pay me right now, hasta la pasta, bye. But then, like, once I actually like got back to my apartment, like, once I was like, okay, well, now I can sleep in, now I can like take care of myself, I was like, well, I have so much ingrained resentment towards these activities of taking care of people that I have a hard time applying that to myself. And so, I sort of channeled that in with Vanya, and then like we talked about with Emmerich being the obnoxious know-it-all in class, and like with Ragna, I think just there are times where I'm just like, why would people do these very complicated things instead of doing the quick and like maybe not so much fun, but the easier, the Occam's razor kind of thing. Why do people make it so complicated? And Gisele, all the body image stuff. Jonisa, I think it's just very much the vibe of, I'm an adult and I'm surrounded by teenagers, and this is the worst.
That is definitely her.
Right? I gotta go get paid, man. I don't know what to tell you. She's so great.
On that note, do you think you would be friends with any of the characters in Little Thieves?
I would absolutely go drinking with Jonisa. I think like she would be very fun. I feel like Ragna would also be fun. I think Gisele's got a little bit too much to work out before. Like, I think she's got some maturing to do. Vanya, I would not trust for an inch, but like, she'd be the kind of friend that you take with you to a party of people you hate, and then just be like, go forth and destroy. And I'll be at the back watching the chaos unfold. And Emmerich would be the kind of guy that you would like bring home to keep your obnoxious cousin occupied with debating.
Oh, that is very specific, but also right? Yes, I can see it.
That's exactly what his role in life would be. I don't know if I would want to hang out with him because I feel like he'd just be constantly correcting my grammar, but I think maybe potentially, but also he'd just be too prone to debating people and be like, oh, just stop. Take it down a notch, bud.
With NaNoWriMo on the horizon, what is your top advice for aspiring writers?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, there's always the generic stuff of, don't quit your day job. That's a big one, honestly, frankly. I think for a lot of folks, look at how author income works and then figure out if that's going to work for you. There's also, don't give up, which is true. Literally the only people who are still in publishing from the year that I started are the people who didn't give up. And like, that is, this is a business that will make you try to give up in many ways.
Yes.
And like, and even the most successful people that are just like, they'll have days where they're just face down on the couch, if they're lucky, if not the carpet, just be like, why have I done this to myself? So, there's that, don't give up, all that good stuff. Well, the other thing is that I would actually, so this is not a product placement, I swear, but when I have a big project that I'm working on and I'm trying to get a lot of work done on it over a short period of time, one of the things that I found, at least when it came to like, counting word count, is if I was like, okay, well, I need to write 1,000 words a day, and then I, miss a day, or like, it's like, okay, I came up 400 short. Then I'm like, all right, well, I'll just write 1,400 tomorrow and it'll be fine. And then the next day I'd be like, I have no idea what to write because I put more pressure on myself. I use Pacemaker, which is a free tool. You basically put in your goal and how long you have to do it. And what it'll do is be like, all right, so you need to write 800 words a day. Let's say you miss a day. And it's, instead of being like, all right, well, now you need to write 1,600 words. It says, all right, well, now you need to write 810 words per day. And that's it. And it helps manage the anxiety of falling behind. it helps me a lot in that regard, and it makes it feel more manageable rather than being like, oh god, if I don't type it, do twice as much work, then I'm going to be a failure as an author. So Pacemaker is a tool that does that, and it's got a lot of functionality and like really cool customization, and I swear by it.
I think we have time for one more question.
Excellent.
Okay, this is from Amy, and it's about the Merciful Crows. Where did the idea for it come from?
Oh man, I was reading an article. This was years and years ago, but I was reading an article about the lives of medieval executioners, and there was this whole thing about, this is they started at, or the practice was sort of codified at a time when murder was illegal and people needed to be executed for it, and they were like, how do we do this? And they basically did it by creating this class of people who were very socially limited, and they were not allowed to interact with other people, and their job was to be the executioner, and their family was like that was their family job. And that kind of idea of like, as I was reading more and more about like the various traditions that they had, and rules that they had to follow, I was like, this is an interesting story, but I would want to tell a story about like roaming executioners, because you wouldn't need to do that many in a single place, but why would you need roaming executioners? And then from then on, like that crashed, that little molecule crashed into the to the electron of plague doctors, and that's where it all sort of came together. And that was like back in, I want to say 2014, so it was a while back.
So for me, that question and We Hunt the Flame, that was also a while ago, but I remember my sisters and I watching The Lord of the Rings and Hunger Games back to back. And so then we were outside gardening, and I was like, what if the games were set in a fantasy world? Yes. And that sort of sparked the story, where it was just all these characters coming together onto this island to destroy each other for a prize. But I didn't know what the prize was, because I do not outline.
Right.
And so I wrote about 30,000 words, and it was just not sitting right. And that's when I was like, okay, let me just sit down and sketch the world's map. I'm not an artist, but I am a designer. And so I'm a very, very visual person.
You're a very good designer.
And so that's when I was like, okay, this map represents the Mediterranean region quite a bit. Why don't I just move it further south to Arabia? And that's when the story really found its bearings and its groundings and just took off.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's always cool to know where your ideas come from. I don't know where my newest one has come from. It's just a mess. A big list.
That's the thing, is like sometimes it's just a whole bunch of different ideas sort of colliding at the right time, and then you're like, oh no, this has made a horrible baby, but it could be a good book. It could be a good book if I work on it for like a year or two.
I think we're out.
Yeah, we're at 8:00. Yay, there's Third Place Books.
Hello, I'm back.
Hello.
Hi.
So, hello. It's about time that we call it a night. We've hit our hour. I'm just going to take this last minute to say a huge thank you to both of you so much for being here. This was such a great conversation. Audience members, thank you so much for tuning in. It's so great to have you here. For everyone who'd like to get your hands on Little Thieves, go ahead and follow. You know what? The link was in chat. It has been time since then. There's been activity in there since then.
Some conversation.
So I'm going to just throw that link. There's the link. It's in chat. Go ahead and follow that. For those of you who are coming to the signing tomorrow, hooray. We can't wait to see you. This is going to be so much fun. Of course, all of you, let us know what you thought of the event, either in person or on social media. We always love to hear from you. And with that, Margaret and Hafsah, huge thank you for being here. And of course, for sharing your work. This has been an absolute pleasure. Are there any last words that you'd like to share before we start the awkward waving?
Supply chain issues are real, folks. So
that is true.
If you really want a copy this week, I would pick one up very quickly.
Yeah, we're looking down the barrel like, oh boy, because it's great news. What a wonderful problem to have. Your first printing is sold out. It's so
which is wild.
Yep. now's the time, folks.
Mhm.
And regardless of the supply chain issues, you should pick it up just so that you can like read it ASAP and like suffer with the rest of us. Well, actually, you don't really suffer towards the end, but you know.
You're right. At the end, towards the end, the suffering is a minimum. It's a minimum of suffering. The suffering ends, so it's got that going for it, you know.
Yeah, I guess.
I haven't gotten that far yet, but I can't wait. Okay, so one more last huge thank you. We'll see you all soon. And shall we let the awkward waving commence?
Yes.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Kissing. There we go.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye. Good night.